Good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon's proceedings, like this morning's, are being live transmitted, but after a 10-minute delay, those with mobile telephones may use them to report what they hear in the hearing room, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're reporting. They may not be used for recording or photography. Yes.
Mr. Taylor, I'd like to ask you about HN 118's access to the Globalised Resistance computer database. 118 himself described how he became the Globalised Resistance webmaster because, as he put it, his predecessor stepped back from activism. So if we begin with that, could you comment on the accuracy of 118's description of himself becoming the GR webmaster?
I don't think webmaster was a term we really used to describe him. It wasn't just him. He wasn't the master. There was a number of other people involved in that. Certainly the person that did the website before had not stepped back from activism, just moved on to other things. And then a team, there's two people from the steering committee, 118 and another activist who took the bulk of the work on the website, and a few other people made contributions towards it as well. The technical side of it was covered by those two people. Content generation was done by a larger group of people.
What information would that particular role have given 118? What accessed information, being, for want of a better word, being webmaster, would you have had access to?
Well, as far as the website was concerned, it was anything we put up on there and anything that was written for it. Although being on a computer in the office did give you access to the membership list and the bank details and anything else. So he had access to a lot of details about individuals who were involved in globalised resistance, and many people that weren't, because there was a big list of people receiving our emails, which was kept on we had the email list, but I think there was a database coverage of that as well. So there's a lot of people who were just receiving our emails, probably quite a few of his colleagues in the police, to be honest with you, and a number of journalists and all the rest of it who were just following what we were doing out of interest rather than support. So there was a lot of people's details he had access to.
So the email list, this would be an email list of everyone who was a member of Globalised Resistance?
Well, much wider than that, because you could sign up to our emails on the website or whatever just to get the weekly mailing. I did a quite an informal kind of weekly. Well, I think it was weekly. Probably varied, knowing me. Just an updates on our various campaigns and things that are happening, activism you could get involved with. So. Those emails ended up in the media and what have you, so there must have been a lot of journalists and everything looking at that stuff and reporting on us.
Could you give us a very rough idea of how many email addresses would have been on the list that HN 118 had access to?
The number of email addresses we had, I would estimate it at a couple of thousand, maybe more, I can't remember, to be honest with you.
The database, what information was on the database above email addresses?
That was on the database. There would be people's names and addresses and phone numbers and email addresses, and there was also bank records. I don't know if they went on the. No, I don't think they didn't go on the database. They were just. When people joined, we tried to get them to fill in a standing order to give us regular money, because that's what we really needed. Basically, that got sent off to the bank. So I don't think that was, and that wasn't actually kept on the GR office computers, because our treasurers, there was three treasurers of Globalised Resistance throughout its life, and none of them worked in the office. So that all the bank details were held elsewhere.
You mentioned computers. I wonder if we could put up on screen MPS 0035202. So at your tab B236, which is a report we've dated 28th of May 2004. I wonder if we could turn to page 2, and it is the last report on page 2. So the second paragraph, if we're starting from there, whilst in the office, Taylor habitually used his own second-generation iMac computer. He has recently noticed that whenever he pops out of the office for a few minutes, Privacy, an occasional office volunteer, will always log out of one of the other iMacs and continue work on Taylor's own machine. This used to be a logical thing to do, as Taylor's computer was far faster than any of the others, but the recent installation of 3 other equally specified computers has made Taylor question why Privacy would do such a thing. In an effort to answer that question, Taylor has set up a secret audit program on his machine that records in a hidden folder all the programs, drives, folders, and documents accessed during his absence. The program also monitors any internet use and any sent or received email that is accessed. Now, just pausing there, the computers that are referred to, the iMacs, are they your computers or are they globalized resistance computers?
Where it says my own second generation iMac, I did buy that. We inherited 2 Mac computers, which were pretty elderly when we got hold of them, to be honest with you. So they were quite slow. And I had my own computer, which I used both for personal stuff and for office stuff in the office. I didn't have a computer at home. So, yeah, I had my own computer there as well.
Did HN118 have access to all of the computers, your computers and the GR computers?
I think any volunteer coming into the office, if I wasn't there and using my computer, could use my computer. I wasn't that precious about it, and there wasn't an issue of trust with the volunteers. So yeah, they would have had access to it. Yeah. So
there was an issue of trust, did you say?
No, there wasn't really. I mean, I don't recognise this. I know who his name is covered with privacy because I've read the report elsewhere. I never had an issue of trust with that activist.
Well, it says here that you set up a secret audit program in a hidden folder to determine who is accessing what. Would you agree that, if true, suggests that you were suspicious of people in the office using the computers? Otherwise, why set up a secret audit program?
Yeah, but the thing is, that's not true. I wouldn't know the first thing about setting up a secret folder like that. I'm not very techie savvy, so I wouldn't know how to do that, and I didn't do that.
Do you know where, if not true, where HN118 may have got that impression from? Is that it?
I don't know. Perhaps he set up a hidden folder himself. I don't know.
Did he give the impression that he was tech savvy, that he was good
Yeah.
with computers?
Yeah, he. I mean, that's why we pointed him towards the website. We knew we wanted a much more involved, sophisticated, and larger website. So we turned as much of our resources onto it as possible. So that's why he got there, because he seemed to be much more competent with that kind of stuff than I was.
I just want to go through the last 2 paragraphs because your evidence is that that there were no secret audit programs at all.
None that I had anything to do with, no.
Because in this report of HN118, he goes on to say, it should be noted that Taylor has done this out of a niggling curiosity rather than any specific suspicions about privacy. And after 2 days of operation, the only thing of interest that arose was some rather revealing pictures that Privacy had posted of himself on the gay cruising website Gaydar. So what this is reporting is not only were you suspicious, not only did you set up an audit program, but indicating that these were some of the results.
No, I don't recognise that. I never saw any pictures like that of that activist, no.
And the last paragraph here, Taylor intends to leave the program in place, however, and has in fact upgraded its capability in the last 24 hours to include a sub-program that will record the use and attachment of any external portable drives, such as the key fob type USB pens that are increasingly popular?
I can't do things like that. I wish I could. That would have been quite useful, but no, that's not me.
So, from your perspective, is there any truth in what is described there about these audit programs that were installed?
No, like I said, there wasn't an issue of trust with me and the people using the computers in the office. I neither had the motivation nor the capability of doing stuff like that, to be honest with you.
I wonder if we can take that down. I'd like to just turn, Mr. Taylor, to a couple of paragraphs in your statement. It's page 40 of Mr. Taylor's statement, please. It's paragraphs 56 and 57 on page 40. Before leaving the website, I'd just like to ask you about this. You set out here, Wellings was one of a small group of people with responsibility for the GR website, and then you say this: he did drag his feet with certain tasks and in that way altered the communications of the organisation. When we wanted to appeal for witnesses after a couple of GR activists had been arrested at a protest, the appeal was not forthcoming, and this may have been detrimental to their court case. In hindsight, the fact that Wellings worked on the website gave him full access to the computers in the office and therefore to our database of our members' details and our financial records, which Wellings copied and passed on to the desk. I do not know what the police then did with this information, but it seemed very important to them. Now, in relation to what you've set out there, particularly in paragraph 56, you're indicating that you wanted to appeal for witnesses, but that due to HM 118 taking his time, this didn't come into effect. Could you just provide us with a little more information in relation to this instance?
Yes, I think this is referring to the Kissinger protest, which was in April 2001, and a couple of people had been arrested on that protest, and I think it was for very, very minor offences, the lowest level of public order thing, I think. I'm not sure. But, we wanted to appeal for witnesses, and, we asked him to put it up, and he found excuses not to do it, I think. And that... I can't remember to be honest with you, I can't remember the outcome of those cases, so I really can't say the effect it had.
Did you witness those arrests yourself?
I didn't know, no.
What, were you aware of whether HM 118 would have witnessed those arrests at all?
He was more likely to have been witness to it because I think he was on that part of the protest and I wasn't. That protest had the street theatre part of it, which is the public-facing part of it, at the front of the Royal Albert Hall, and I think there was a group of people trying to blockade the car park or trying to, get in the way of Kissinger's route to the hall, and I think the arrests were made in that part of the protest, and I think also Wellings was part of that part of the protest as well.
Would there have been any scope for misunderstanding in relation to what you were asking for in terms of putting an appeal on the GR website for witnesses? How clear were you in relation to that? Was it a suggestion that it might be helpful?
I mean, to be honest with you, if you misunderstood that, it would have to be willful. I mean, if an organisation who's had two people arrested on a protest who organised on that protest organised by that organisation was asking for witnesses, it's pretty obvious what we need is people that saw it and can give evidence which will help those people arrested. So I don't think it could be confused for anything else.
Did you ask him, or did you chase him as well in relation to that? From what you recall, accepting it was some time ago.
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I probably did chase him. That would be the normal thing to do, but yeah, I can't remember how things progressed with that. It's one of those forgettable times with Simon Wellings.
Can we move now to another document, so at your tab B239? It's MPS 003 5842. It's page 2 of this document. It's the information, and Mr. Taylor, this has been brought to your attention, you're content for this to be referred to. So it says, when in the office, Taylor habitually works at the same computer, despite there being a total of 4 Apple iMacs available. This machine, a second generation iMac, uses a username and password protocol to access the building's local area network. And then this, Taylor's username is Guy Taylor, case sensitive and space must be entered. His password is Nigel, again case sensitive. Nigel is Taylor's middle name. What was your reaction when you read this report for the first time, a undercover officer report providing your username and password?
My reaction, to be honest, it's possible that I told people in the office that login. I wasn't that security conscious on stuff like this, so it's possible, I can't remember if I told people that or not. I don't think that computer was set up with more than one login, so if other people were using it, they must have known it. And the relief that I don't use that as a password anymore, especially since the rise of reform.
In terms of what additional information that would have allowed HM118 access to, is there any additional information or not over and above what we've already referred to, the database, emails and the like?
I think on that computer, the only additional stuff would be personal stuff to me, like emails, and it would be the emails, both from my personal address and from the office address at Globalised Resistance. That was the only extra stuff on that computer, as far as I can remember.
I wonder if we can please put up on screen now, moving to a separate topic. So at your tab B170, it's MPS 002 7912. So this refers to, as we can see, Ariel Sharon protest outside Downing Street. And we can see members of Globalised Resistance, the London-based anti-capitalist group, were out in force yesterday evening, Monday the 14th of July, to protest against the visit of the Israeli Premier Ariel Sharon to Downing Street. It then goes on, if we go 4 paragraphs down, the intelligence made little difference as the attempted arrest of a protester deep in the crowd that had gathered proved to be the catalyst for minor public disorder that rumbled on for the next half hour or so. This culminated in the arrest of Taylor, who was attempting to lead a dash into Whitehall to carry out a sit-down protest. Okay, so this refers to your arrest here, and if we could also put up on screen, if possible, next to this, what you said about this in your statement at page 8, please. Thank you. Yes, it was on page 8, and it's paragraph 22. Thank you. Yes, it's the MBS number of the previous report was 002 7912. So in relation to this report, at paragraph 22 of your statement, you refer to the report. Wellings has a report of a protest on the 14th of July 2003. I did attend this large protest of a few thousand people and attempted to sit down in Downing Street as a lawful, peaceful protest. I was arrested, taken to Charing Cross Police Station, from where I was released without charge a few hours later. It appeared that the police, although very interested in me at the time, also decided I'd broken no laws on the evening in question. My question to you is, to what extent was HN 118 present at that particular action at which you were arrested?
Well, he was definitely there. I mean, basically, when you got a crowd of people with a pen and you think it would be a really good idea for people to go and sit down in the street and just make a bit more of an issue about things, what you do is you run up and down trying to get people you think are going to come with you, and you get there's a part of Downing Street where the barriers stop either side of a tree. And so I got a crew of people together. I said, right, I don't mind leading this, but come on, let's get on the road and hopefully start a run of people onto the road, and everyone else will follow us, and we will have a mass of people sitting down on the road and blocking the street and making a big fuss of it and get more news coverage or get more attention to the whole thing. So I got them all together. I ran into the road. I got about 10 yards into the road. I turned around and everyone else had stopped. And I was on my own in the street and got nicked. So it was just one of those things didn't quite come off. Yeah, it happened a couple of times to me, that one. But yeah.
Would you have known whether 118 would have been aware that you'd been arrested?
I wouldn't have been surprised if he was behind me, one of the people that stopped.
Well, if we just read on from that paragraph in the report that referred to you being arrested, so this culminated in the arrest of Taylor, who was attempting to lead a dash into Whitehall to carry out a sit-down protest. At least 3 other arrests were made, including the arrest of a Korean national and one ISM member. And then the report states, it is important to note that prior to the disorder, globalised resistance activists had been busily passing through the crowd in both an attempt to both stir up the crowd and up the ante and gauge people's willingness to mount some form of direct action. Instrumental in this endeavour were Taylor himself, Chris Nynham, Julie Waterson, Amy Jowett, Privacy, Simon Wellings, Privacy, and the visiting Virginia Rodriguez. These individuals were also centrally involved once the disorder broke out, in particular in whipping up the crowd in the attempt to de-arrest and trap the police officers carrying out the initial arrest. This is 118's report, referring to himself in the penultimate paragraph on this page.
Yeah. I don't actually remember any disorder breaking out other than me running into the street on my own. I don't know if I'd been arrested by that point, but certainly knowing those people, I can't see them trying to de-arrest anyone, but maybe they did, but I didn't see that. I think by that stage I must have had my abortive attempt at leading something magnificent and been in the back of a police van by that point, because I don't remember any of that.
I'm going to ask about another action carried out by Global Resistance. I wonder if we could take both these documents down. And so it's your page B26. It is MPS 008295. We've already had some reference to it. It's in relation to Henry Kissinger's planned visit in 2002. And this report, as we can see, dated the 15th of February 2002. And just to go through the report, Guy Taylor has arranged for a reconnaissance of the Royal Albert Hall to take place before the planned protest against the visit of Henry Kissinger on the 24th of April 2002 to the Institute of Directors' annual general meeting. Taylor, and indeed the entire planning committee for the protest, is keen to establish likely entrances and exits that Kissinger and his expected entourage will seek to use, particularly vehicular ones. They are also keen to consider where and how police are likely to erect any pens or barriers, and perhaps more significantly, where potential breakout points may exist once those fences have been erected. The reconnaissance is to include photographs of the building, its entrances and exit points, and the road junctions surrounding the entire complex. Taylor wants this work completed in time for the next Kissinger Welcoming Committee meeting, which is due to take place on the evening of the Wednesday, the 20th of March 2002. If it was, if someone were to say that there was, again, some justification in the police obtaining intelligence about someone who was looking to not only protest in relation to someone like Henry Kissinger visiting the country and addressing the Institute of Directors, but to such an extent that photographs taking of entry and exit points. There's some justification for the police in seeking such information. What would your reaction be to that?
I certainly didn't do any reconnaissance of the Royal Albert Hall. I've been to a number of gigs there, and I know how many entrances there are to that place, and there's numerous. I don't think photographs of all the entrances to the Royal Albert Hall are going to help anyone. There is, I think, round the back, like I said in the previous bit, we were talking about how there was two parts of the protest. We had one where massive, it was a 3 metre high puppet of Henry Kissinger, with people dressed as, there's one person dressed as Ronald McDonald, another person dressed as a high-powered businessman. There was a judge. There was all, sorry, sir, but there was all these different characters which we had and put on a bit of a show trial of Henry Kissinger. We'd done that, I think, the week before, inside in a meeting with Bruce Kent from CND doing the prosecution case. So we were keen to educate people about Henry Kissinger and why we were opposed to him, because we realised that a lot of younger people wouldn't have heard of him. So we were very keen to educate as well as mobilise in these circumstances. So we organised that around the front. But a number of people who wanted, both in globalised resistance and some not in globalised resistance, wanted to blockade his way in, which we thought was a valid thing to do as well. So we had two meeting points and two almost separate things going on. One round the back to blockade, one round the front, bit of theatre, a bit of education, and then a protest. So it was a dual purpose thing. And I don't remember ever wanting to. I mean, maybe the vehicular entrance was of specific interest to the people blockading at the back. I can't imagine Henry Kissinger walking to the venue from his hotel. So, yeah, that would have been of interest. But basically, we just wanted to get our show on the road or on the pavement at least, and maybe cause as much impact as we could, using our ever trusty tactic of sitting down in roads. So yeah, we tried that later.
So you used the word blockade in relation to the Royal Albert Hall. Again, if someone were to say, well, isn't there some justification in the police seeking intelligence about groups that want to blockade, for example, the Royal Albert Hall? Some justification in that.
well, it's I mean, like, it's quite an ambitious thing to block a place that size, and I'm not sure if I mean, like, I would imagine it would be just a matter of having a couple of van loads of police to move people on. I don't think you need much forward planning or intelligence about that, but if you want it that way, you can.
I'm going to ask you about another report. So it's at your tab B174. It's MPS 002-8972. This is dated the 1st of September 2003. Now, we can see this is headed DSEI protests. If we just go straight to the penultimate paragraph on this page, GR's likely response to this will be to send the more direct action-minded activists out on raiding parties up and down the DLR in attempt to catch arriving delegates on trains. Several globalised activists, including Noel Douglas and Privacy, have been hoarding spray paint, and if the opportunity presents itself, they will attack arriving delegates with paint, blood-filled balloons and eggs and the like. If there is a sufficient turnout and any weakness can be found in the building's defences, it cannot be ruled out that GR activists will attempt to gain entry to the centre, but this is their least favoured option. Just beginning with accuracy, to what extent is this paragraph accurate in HM118's report?
The thing that really stands out to me is this blood-filled balloons. I think in the early days of globalised resistance, someone mentioned blood-filled balloons, and it was treated with a bit of incredulity. And globalised resistance never acquired a blood-filled balloon. I don't know where you get them from, and it'd be. I think someone had mentioned it earlier on in something about the war or whatever. I can't remember, but it became a bit of a running joke that we'd have blood-filled balloons, and probably just to tease the activists that came up with that idea in the first place. So. I don't know why he repeats it. I mean, like, you know, I suppose it's another instance of his ever turning up the volume on the sheer madness of the stuff. I think there were some globalised activists wanting to go on the DLR and perhaps talk to, or maybe talk at, the delegates, and perhaps do a speech about. The impact of arms that are on sale at these events. That was done by other groups as well. I think that was probably the extent of the stuff which was aimed at the DLR. But paint, blood-filled balloons and eggs was never used, and I don't think we even contemplated it, to be honest with you. So again, it's inflation and exaggeration.
So just to be clear in relation to that, because in terms of what is set out here, it's not just an idea was canvas. It refers to hoarding spray paint. Again, is that something?
No, that's. I don't know where. I mean, certainly it wasn't hoarded in the office. It wasn't hoarded at my place. I don't know where it was hoarded, but I've got no knowledge of stuff like that being hoarded.
And if we turn to the second page, please, of the same report. At the top of the page, the plan for the 10th of September is at present still much more fluid, but the intention is still to cause disruption to the running of the DLR and possibly the Jubilee line, which feeds into it from central London. And again, if it was suggested to you that there was some justification for police seeking intelligence about groups that wanted to disrupt the DLR and the Jubilee line, what would you say to those people who said that there is some justification in police seeking this intelligence?
I would say that the idea that 30 to 35 activists are more than willing to perform lock-ons, i.e. do an arrestable offence, is quite surprising to me. I would be amazed if we had that many people willing to stick themselves out that far. I think what's at play here is the idea that they needed to have things which were like this in order to report them, in order to justify their existence. I mean, like this doesn't bear much resemblance to what the reality was. I mean, we didn't have the money to hoard stuff. We didn't have the money. There's a lot of reports in the disclosed documents which detail the financial crisis we were almost continually in GR, and the way that I irregularly got paid. The idea of spending loads of money on D-locks or spray paint or whatever to just so we could have it in store just in case it's useful is fantasy again. It's I mean we couldn't afford that kind of stuff. We didn't do that kind of stuff. It didn't happen.
You've mentioned D-locks, and just on that point, if you can just briefly turn up, so it's at your tab B173. It's MPS 0028914. It's just on that point, Mr. Taylor. This is again 1st of September 2003. It's page 3. It's the penultimate paragraph of page 3, which says there is a core group of about 35 activists who are more than willing to perform lock-ons. Guy Taylor Globalises full-time is likely to ask a trusted comrade to obtain a number of D-locks and armoured cable of the like used to secure pedal cycles later this week. Now this says that you are likely to do so, so it doesn't report that you do. But again, I think this is what you were referring to in terms of D-locks. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how much a D-lock was in those days, but I mean, it was more than we could afford. We didn't have the financial capability of backing up stuff like this. So I don't know. I don't know where he gets it from, to be honest with you.
I want to ask about something that you referred to this morning, and if we could turn up report at Sir your tab B179. It's MPS 0029217. So this is a report dated the 3rd of October 2003, and you can see this is in the period of the state visit of George W. Bush to the UK in November of that year. And in relation to page 1, the last 2 paragraphs, I'm sorry, it is the last 2 paragraphs of the top report. Can you see where it says informally? So, yeah, thank you. Informally, Taylor has already begun discussing ideas with a few trusted friends and activists. Early ideas include the construction of a large wheeled prop along the lines of the large pink and orange tank that featured at DSEI and on S27 that could make an appearance at each venue that Bush visits. And then this. Another idea is to somehow get a vehicle into Bush's motorcade as it arrives or departs a venue, perhaps escorted by activists dressed as Secret Service agents. Okay. How accurate is HM118's report when he reports the idea of getting some sort of vehicle into George W. Bush's motorcade during the state visit?
I think I said earlier I welcomed mad ideas because we thought sometimes a mad idea can be worked upon into something which could work. But I don't actually recall any of that. I don't think. I mean, like the amount of effort that went into making that pink and orange tank was immense. I mean, like quite a bit of Wellings's time was invested in it. I think we had two days of police overtime working on that pink and orange tank, and it meant that we it was quite an impressive thing in its amateurish way. To build another vehicle like that, I'm thinking, I don't know, is there a date on this article, on this document?
So this is, we have dated it as the 3rd of October 2003
right.
for this
I don't know how
report.
far in advance of Mr. Bush's visit that was.
His visit was between the 19th and the 21st of November.
Right,
So this
there was a
report
bit
was
of
shortly
time.
before that.
I suppose it would be possible to build something like that in that time, but that tank took 2.5 weekends of quite a few activists' time to stick it all together. It was a joyful prop we had, but and also to get the prop along to each of the venues that Bush visits. That's a lot of pushing on casters around London, that is. It's possible that we discussed something like that, but I don't think we agreed on something like that, and we certainly didn't go ahead with it. We were great at discussing mad ideas, but this never got beyond the stage of mad idea, really.
I want to ask you about another report that refers back to this visit. It is, I wonder if you can take that down and then call up, so it's at your tab B239. This is MPS 0035842, which we've dated at July 2004. And I wonder if we could please turn to page 3 in this report. It's the last 2 paragraphs on that page. Perhaps most significantly, Nineham has already warned his close friend and fellow activist Guy Taylor that he must be ready to mount real and effective direct action in both the lead-up to the ESF and, of course, at the G8 that will follow some 6 months later. This course of action will always be determined by political expediency. Nineham would only order it done if it was necessary. For instance, if very radical young activists were being attracted elsewhere to get their kicks, or if the resultant publicity was desperately needed. And then this situation has existed before, when US President George Bush visited London. In that case, Nineham, who had put Taylor on standby to kick things off with the police in Trafalgar Square, eventually reined Taylor in, rather than let him off the leash. This was as a direct result of pressure coming from key activists in the Muslim Association of Britain, who wanted no part of a riot. Nineham knew that it was vital at that time to keep them within the Stop the War coalition, and so settled for a protest that, although huge, inevitably made less of an impact than, say, the poll tax demonstration. Now, this reference here to Nineham putting you on standby to kick things off with the police, how accurate is that a description of what he said to you?
I want to start by saying that Nineham could neither order, rein in, or let me off the leash in any way. He didn't have that kind of power over me. Basically, he's a good friend, and I got a huge amount of respect for him, and I would listen to his ideas, but that wasn't the type of relationship we had. If Nineham has never asked anyone to kick things off with the police. To be honest with you, I don't know how to kick things off with the police. I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest with you. A load of people turning up in armour with big sticks, me going up to them and saying, let's have a fight. It's not going to happen. So I didn't have the knowledge or, kind of like experience of kicking things off with the police at all. I mean, I'm not sure if anyone knows how to kick things off.
What about, not the suggestion, but what it actually says in this report, that the reason that he was reining you in was because of pressure from the Muslim Association of Britain, who wanted no part of a riot? Does that ring any bells? Is there any truth in what is set out here?
I think the pattern to 118's exaggerations he finds a fact and builds on it with his own imagination and his own logic. So it's possible that the Muslim Association of Britain have expressed that they want a peaceful demonstration or something. But I mean, like, how that impacted on my communications with Chris Nineham is something I don't understand. Certainly, I've never really kind of been much of a one to enjoy a riot. I've been on a few protests that have kicked off in one way or another, and I've been injured on one of the Welling demonstration in 1993 or 4, whenever it was. It's a frightening experience when a protest gets attacked by the police. It really is, and it can be very damaging. And it's not the type of thing I revel in. It's not the type of thing I'd ever seek. So again, this is more exaggeration than fantasy.
I want to ask you about globalised resistance and the media, but before I do, may I just refer you to one more report, and then we'll go on to that topic. It is, sir, at your tab B130. It is MPS 0011564. It's a report we've dated 27th of January 2003. It's on, you can see there, globalised resistance, stop the war, disruption of meetings attended by government ministers. And it states that Guy Taylor, the leader of globalised resistance, is delighted with the disruption that was caused at last week's meeting at South Camden School, where Tony Blair was the keynote speaker. Blair was aggressively heckled during his speech by a young male GR member, Privacy. He was eventually removed by Labour Party officials and security. This incident was captured by television news crews and carried extensively on that evening's news programmes. Privacy is a student at the LSE and is reportedly close to Privacy, another GR stalwart, who is practically a full-time agitator for GR and the SWP within the LSE. Although this action was carried out under the banner of Stop the War, it was very much organised and carried out by globalised people. Taylor met with Privacy outside the venue, primed him about what to shout, and was instrumental in providing him with the Labour Party member's card that he needed to get into the venue. The vast majority of protesters who attended the demonstration were GR members or sympathisers, and Taylor has very much been credited with the action's success. The mood of Taylor and his key activists is upbeat and confident. They genuinely believe that they can stop any military action against Iraq. Taylor now plans a sustained campaign of harassment against any government minister that speaks at any London-based public meeting. He hopes to launch another disruptive action as soon as possible. Again, the same question about accuracy. To what extent is this report accurate?
I don't actually remember much about it. I remember it. I remember it happened. I remember being quite pleased about Blair getting heckled. I mean, he was just about to launch a war which took the lives of millions of people. And as far as I was concerned, if someone was going to heckle him, good on them. Did I get Labour Party membership's card? I might have done. Type of thing I'd be happy to do, but I can't actually remember doing it. So I think anything we could do to actually take it to the ministers, the people who are most responsible for launching that war, I think good on them. And it would have been good to be able to do it on a regular basis. But I think they probably stepped up security after that type of event, and we wouldn't be able to do it much more. So I think in general that's quite accurate. I think there's a few cases of embellishment again, but
so the
I wish all these reports were that nice about me.
The reference to a sustained campaign of harassment, how would you have described it?
When it came to interrupting a speech by a minister or whatever, if we heard of one or we came across one, we would probably try and do that in the time of build up to that horrible illegal war. Although we didn't have access to ministers' diaries or anything, and we rarely found out about that type of thing. So a campaign of harassment would be a bit ambitious for people with our limited knowledge of where they would be, and it's not something we put a lot of resources into trying to find out. To be honest with you, we wanted to get other things going. I mean, like that kind of action is great, but it's individual. It's one person or maybe two or three in the meeting. Our accent was on trying to get as many people involved as possible on the streets, on a protest. You know, it was opening the door to activists to get involved in things. So this wasn't our bread and butter stuff, and it was probably gave us a nice platform to announce the next demonstration or whatever. But I mean, like, it wasn't our key action.
Thank you. We can take that document down now, please. One of the justifications for the undercover technique that was used was that there was no other way of obtaining intelligence on various groups. I want to explore with you now the extent to which Globalised Resistance published what they were doing and were public about their actions and intended actions. And I want to begin by the newsletter. There was a newsletter called Resist. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Could you help us with what that was, how often it came out, and what sort of information would have been on there, please?
Resist was a 4 or 8 page newsletter with various articles. It had a what's coming up column with things which were going to happen in the near future. It had reports on protests and actions we'd taken, and it had news on meetings of you could come along to and get involved, basically.
Who was able to attend those meetings?
Basically, I mean, you could download you could buy the newsletter for a few pence on a protest, or you could download it from the website. And to get stuff into it, there's normally an editor. There was a working group for the newsletter. I didn't really involve myself in it. I knew that if I did, I'd be sucked into the minutiae of what's going in this week and everything. And so it was. There was a few editors, not necessarily people from the steering committee. From time to time, they'd change editors, and it would be basically, if you approach the editor, you can get your stuff in. I didn't really censor it. I didn't have much control over what was in it. I just let it go, really.
I wonder if we could turn to MPS 008750, search your tab B50. This is a report that dated 30th of April 2002. Globalised Resistance, BBC film crew. The BBC, who are making television documentary film about May Day, have approached Guy Taylor of Globalised Resistance with a view to GR's participation in the making of the documentary. After some negotiation, it has been agreed that Noel Douglas and Sue Jones will have a film crew with them throughout the 1st of May. They will be seeking to record a fly-on-the-wall portrait of the preparations for the protest and the march and demonstration itself. Douglas is due to meet with a producer from the BBC on Tuesday the 30th of April 2002 to discuss the project. The BBC may also take this opportunity to shoot some footage of Douglas preparing some of the digital imagery in which he specialises. Is that accurate in terms of Globalised Resistance discussions with the BBC about making a fly-on-the-wall documentary about preparations for and the May Day protest?
I think so. I suppose you better ask Noel the day after tomorrow, but I think it probably happened. We did a lot of. When the media looked at the anti-capitalist movement, we were one of the few groups that would actually talk to them. A lot of the more anarchist side of things, understandably, didn't trust the mainstream media and didn't talk to them. But we thought, if you give an interview to the BBC or whatever and it gets broadcast, it's like handing out 500,000 leaflets, isn't it? It's like getting your message out to so many people. So we did do a lot of media. In 2001, when we got kettled on Oxford Circus, I did a live interview with Sky News from inside the kettle because they had cameras pointing at me from up above one of the shops, and So we sought the media. We actually sought a platform and tried to get our message out. So after I did that meeting, that interview with Sky, I had loads of phone calls, and I was in the middle of the kettle saying, "Yeah, you can do Kilroy tomorrow. You go and do this," and I was just handing out interviews to people left, right, and centre, and that was fantastic. We thought that was a real good effective thing. So this type of thing did happen quite frequently. I can't remember this exact example, but I've got no reason to say this is not true.
And what sort of things were you telling the media that, or could you give us an idea of what you were?
Well, normally it would be about why we are protesting, why are we doing it, why are we activists, why do we question things, why are we against this war, against this thing, why are we trying to save the planet? I mean, it was in the early days really of the bigger protests on climate and what have you, and there was still an argument to win with people. So to put things out which said people and planet before profit was very important in those days. So we took every opportunity to do that, and we wanted to get it as far and as wide as possible. And and it showed, because every time we did something like that, we'd have more interest coming in, more hits on the website, more emails coming in of people inquiring as to what we're doing next. So we did a lot of that to try and get our point across. I got a bit of a reputation being a bit of a media whore at the time, but I mean, it's just something I was happy to suffer.
In terms of information, what would HN 118 have been privy to that, say, the media wouldn't, or members of the public wouldn't, by looking at Resist or the website or being on the email group? If it was said that he had access to more specific information about what was about to happen, would that be fair?
What was about to happen, in what way?
In terms of a demonstration or an action that was going to take place.
I don't think 118 would have had a lot of information like that, any more than anyone else. I mean, basically, he liked to build himself up as someone who was in the know. I know that much, but I don't think that really kind of played much of a... I don't think it gave him much benefit in being able to tell what was going to happen, really. So I don't think there'd be a lot of sense in trying to seek that information from him.
What was how would you have described his role in globalised resistance? We've seen reports referring to him being elected to the steering committee, but in terms of his role, how significant was it? I mean, on the face of it, he was a member of the steering committee, and so would he not have had some influence, some power in relation to the direction of globalised resistance? I think
there was normally about anywhere between 15 and 25 people on the steering committee. And it was it wasn't that difficult to get elected to the steering committee. What mattered was how you spoke out in meetings and how you put your point of view across. Wellings wasn't someone that was a regular contributor to the steering committee meetings. I suppose it was more than a watching brief, but basically he was he did, he showed support for people's points of view and what have you, but he only occasionally came up with ideas himself. So I don't think he had a huge amount of impact on
the way that he has described being elected to this steering committee in his statement is, he uses words like, it was wholly unremarkable, it was a slightly meaningless election. As far as the significance is concerned, would you agree with that characterisation, that you say it was wholly unremarkable in many respects, and refers to it as a slightly meaningless election? Is that fair, given the significance that he had as a result of being such a member?
I suppose that reflects the fact that it wasn't that difficult to get elected to the steering committee, but he also used his election to the steering committee to prove to his superiors that he was right at the heart of globalised resistance and doing very well, thank you very much. So he played it both ways, didn't he? He's saying it's one of those things that happens, but also something which means that he's done so well and that he's so central to the whole project. So I think being on the steering committee could lead either way. You could either not turn up to meetings and just have this position, which would be meaningless in that way, or you could get along, get stuck in, get organising stuff, go along to working groups and help mould the future of the organisation. So I think he was very choosy about how he described it to who.
I want to move now to a separate topic, and this is in relation to how HN 118's time in globalised resistance came to an end. And just for context, I'm going to ask if we could please put up on screen 118's statement at page 44, please. So I'm just going to provide some context and I'm going to ask you some questions, Mr. Taylor. So here we can see Operation Dalliance. HN 118 refers to a voicemail which he inadvertently left, which captured part of a desk meeting. The circumstances in which I inadvertently left a voicemail that ultimately led to my expulsion from GR 8 months later can be outlined as follows. A. In mid-January 2004, I had a desk meeting with the relevant C Squad desk officers at a neutral venue. This may have been my cover officer's home, but I cannot now be certain. B. As part of that desk meeting, I was asked whether I had a telephone number for P, one of the activists with whom I associated. I switched my telephone on in order to locate this in the electronic address book and gave the number to the C Squad officers. C. In the course of looking up this number, I inadvertently dialed it as well. BlackBerry devices had a multi-directional toggle switch or a trackball which could be pressed to dial numbers. This must be what happened. D. I was then shown a number of photographs of individuals in order to attempt to make identifications. I did not turn the telephone off before we moved on to this, and so I did not discover that a call had been placed. I wonder if we can turn over the page, please. E. As only emerged later, Privacy did not answer her telephone, so my call went through to the 1571 electronic voicemail service provided by British Telecom. In the course of making those identifications, I mixed up two different activists who had the same forename, assigning an incorrect sexual preference to an individual in the process. This error was an audible part of the recording and protected me from suspicion for a significant period. I cannot be certain, but I believe the voicemail cut out after a period of time. So, I did not discover that this call had been placed until well after the event, by which time Privacy had played the voicemail message to Guy Taylor over the telephone. It was also recorded separately down a telephone line, which degraded the quality of the recording. Now, we'll just pause there. So this recording, you provided the inquiry with.
That's right.
And we're going to play it, but before doing so, for reasons of protecting certain individuals' privacy, we'll hear some beeps, and that's the only significance of the beeps, of course, not on the original, but to protect people's privacy. So I wonder, this is your Exhibit 1, I wonder if we could play that now, please. Thank you.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Main menu. First, saved message. Message received. Friday, January 16th at 1:48 p.m.
There's a lot of like charm leading. Yeah, so much. Yeah, because she's. I mean, they'll do anything to get the girls. Do you know what I mean? You know, even if they. Female, you know, so she is. I think I'm on now first, mate, but I don't want to. Doctor, what is? Could be. Yeah, it is. She's around, but she's big on the sort of. You know, obviously the. Would she be close to? Sure, see her at Excel, where all that. She knows that. Yeah. Okay. She is. She's girlfriend. But very overtly lesbian. Yeah. Who's know him as well from lots of stuff, but I don't know his name. Who wrote this year 11? Is that right? Who are these people? Do you know who they are? Have you just photographed them? I keep looking through, I remember it. He's done stuff with GR quite a lot, but he's sort of flirts with the anarchist side of the movement as well. Yeah. He's, and this guy as well, he's SWP, but I can't remember his name. It all comes to me. He's really on populating there, is he? Yeah. No, I've noticed that. I don't think he works in a centre, but he's a central bloke. He looks quite nice, then.
To listen to the message again.
All right, we'll stop it there. Thank you. Now,
Message.
Mr. Taylor, very difficult to make out the detail of that, but could you just help us with the circumstances when you first heard the message that we've just listened to, please?
Okay, so the activist whose phone it was left on called me about almost a week after the message was left and said, "Guy, you've got to listen to this message. It mentions globalised resistance. It's mad. I don't understand it." And I said, "Well, play it to me then." And she goes, "I can't. It's on 1571. And it's going to get wiped in the next couple of hours because I've left it practically a week before contacting you." I had a friend that lived quite close to her, and I called him, and he went round to her flat and recorded it. It wasn't recorded over a phone line. It was he had a dictaphone, I think, and he sent me an MP3 off the recording, and I played it. And I felt a chill really when I heard it. I mean, he admits to getting something wrong, which, not surprising. He got so many things wrong, but he got two activists with the same first name mixed up, and given the fact that he was a policeman trying to get evidence on people or intelligence on people, I think it was quite startling that he managed to get those people mixed up who were very different people and didn't look they didn't look the same. And it was obviously from a picture. So he's transcribing someone's surname onto someone else's name, which I think is pretty shoddy, really. I listened to the recording umpteen times. I played it to everyone coming into the office. I even played it to 118 without knowing. And it was a long time until the penny dropped. In fact, the one Friday afternoon in the Globalised Resistance office, I was there on my own, stuffing envelopes, and I was playing music on my iTunes, and the phone rang, so I hit mute on the iTunes. I took a phone call, and spoke to, it was Simon Wellings on the phone, so I spoke to him, we were having a meeting about the website the following week, so we arranged to have this meeting. I put the phone down, hit mute on the music again, and it had, this is the stuff of Hollywood movies, I admit, but it had shuffled onto that recording. And if you listen very carefully to that recording, there's a bit in it where he uses the phrase, he does lots of stuff like that. And that was one of his frequent phrases. It's, it's like some people say actually all the time, or he says lots of stuff all the time. And he used it in that phone call, and he used it in the phone call I'd just had with him. And that's when it was matching up those phrases, not the sound of his voice. It was that phrase, lots of stuff, which made the penny finally drop with me, and I sussed out that it was him.
I want to go through that in a little more detail.
Sure.
In terms of the error, the mistaken identity, so of course we're not referring to anyone's names, but on the recording, could you just explain what that mistake was?
Well, there was two activists of the same name, same first name, and he gave, I could tell who it was through the description of her and the fact that she was a lesbian. I could tell who that activist was. I went through it. I could identify a number of people they were talking about in that phone call, and then I heard the name of a different person with the same first name, who I knew full well not to be that person. Wasn't a lesbian. And was a much different activist. I mean, the person who it was on the pictures, not who he named, was far more influential and I suppose active than the other person. So I just thought, well, that's a really bad mistake to make. If you're trying to identify people and you've given someone's name and attributed anything else that someone else has done to them, that's pretty poor work, isn't it?
Now, you were describing the process, this comes to your attention,
Yeah.
you get the recording, and then you said you even played it to HN118, and I just want to go to that point in time. I wonder if we could put on screen, so it's at your tab B272. It is report MPS 0708478, please. Okay, so HN118, Groundhog Day, potential telephone compromise, 30th of January 2004, 11:45 approximately. Guy Taylor phones GD, so Groundhog Day, HN118, on a number of issues. Finally tells GD to bear in mind that, quote, the conversation is being listened to. Tells him that about a week ago, Privacy, surname unknown, comrade from Brixton, received an inadvertent phone call which was recorded onto her answer phone. The call was about 2 minutes long and involved a discussion in the background between two males discussing identification of photographs. A mutual weary, Privacy, was referred to by the two males. Privacy had played the recording over the phone to GT via her mobile. GT's attitude did not seem to be hostile or in any way a tester. 12, GD contacts office. 12:40, GD, so this is Groundhog Day, HM118, able to confirm from his mobile history that a 2.5 minute call was made to Privacy's BT line at 13:46 on Friday the 16th of January. GD was taking part in a field meeting at that time at Steve Beals's home with, and it's redacted, and others. Identification from photographs was discussed during the meeting, and there was a reference made to Privacy, and we can see actions 13:15, Andy Rintle informed. And so this appears to be the first report that HN118 produces when he discovers that he had mistakenly left the message, the recording of which has just been played. And does that accord with 30th of January 2004 of your recollection from your point of view when you would have mentioned this to HM118? You're looking now, of course, at 118's side of what you've just discovered, but his description here of you calling him on the 30th of January 2004 and the way in which he describes you revealing this news, does that accord with your recollection as well?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay. Now that's the 30th of January 2004. I want to move forward a few days to it's MPS 0031811, please. So it's at your tab 200. And so just a few days later, you can see at this stage what has happened. Has been given an operation name, Operation Dalliance, and we can see that this is headed debrief of Groundhog Day. So this is the explanation in the file note that is put forward. On the 3rd of February, Groundhog Day was present at a meeting of globalised resistance activists in a public area of the Royal Festival Hall. Also present were Guy Taylor and then 3 others whose names are hidden for privacy reasons, and a Swedish woman in her early 20s. GD was covered by S-Squad surveillance before, during and after the meeting. Now, of course, you would not have been aware of the surveillance officer at the time, but this meeting on the 3rd of February, so this is just a couple of days after you phoned HN118 and told them about this voicemail call. Is that a meeting that you remember just a few days after?
Yeah, vaguely. I mean, not in much detail, but yeah.
And then it's the subject of the conversation recorded on the answer phone of a peripheral activist, privacy, surname unknown, occupied 5 or 6 minutes of an 80-minute meeting. GD reports that although GT has listened to a cassette tape copy of the original recording, he has not recognised GD's voice, and the issue of there being an informant in the group was not even raised. Is that accurate in terms of what 118 is describing, this meeting, that the possibility of, say, an informant was not even raised during this meeting, and that, in fact, it only occupied about 5 or 6 minutes of a meeting that went on for an hour and 20 minutes?
Yeah, but when we have 5 or 6 minutes on it, and I didn't want to make a big thing of it, but I don't think you can have that conversation and not be raising the issue of there being an informant in the group. Maybe not that group that was meeting, but basically, yeah, I did raise the issue of there being an informant somewhere around GR. I didn't know whereabouts that informant was, but I tried to make light of it. There was enough concern and paranoia around the movement as there was, so I didn't really want to make a big thing of it, but I did want to put it out there that we'd had anything, and if anyone had any information, it would be good to share it with us. But certainly, yeah, I didn't want it to upset things in globalised resistance, so I didn't make a big thing of it.
And so if we continue with this debrief, it says the following describe the basis for optimism that the consequences of an unfortunate lapse might not be so severe. First bullet point, Guy Taylor introduced the topic as a footnote to discussion of another matter, and in the following terms, look, I've got to tell you this, it really is funny. And I'm not suggesting that, so he thought it was funny, but are these the sort of, is he accurate, is 118 accurate in describing how you introduced the topic?
I might have done. I was trying to make light of it. I didn't want to make it as serious a point as it actually was, really. I wanted to give people confidence to carry on.
It goes on, the recording of the misidentification of a photograph of another activist by GD and the characterisation of her by another voice as a lesbian was the cause of much glee. Quote, anyone who knows privacy knows that she never goes out without her boyfriend. It's so funny, it's so effing wrong. Again, does that capture the description, the tone of the conversation at this?
I guess it does. If you're going to have people spying on you and you've got everything so badly wrong, it feels a bit less terrible, doesn't it? So yeah, I probably did play up on that mistake and use it as proof it wasn't as bad as it could be.
About the next bullet point, doubts re the provenance of the original recording were couched in terms of long-term concerns for the mental stability of an, quote, orange-haired crackhead woman who claims to have a boyfriend in MI6.
I met that activist once in my life, which was very close to the beginning of globalised resistance, and she helped us paint some banners and placards one afternoon in a community centre in South London. I'd never seen her with orange hair. I had no idea of her claims to have a boyfriend in MI6, and I certainly didn't have her down as a drug taker. So that is not true, that bit. Because
here, what's set out, and you've commented on that part of this paragraph, but it was doubts about the provenance of the original recording. So what's HM118 is setting out here is that in this discussion, there are even doubts about the provenance of the recording.
I didn't doubt the provenance of it. I don't think. That's what he's trying to do. Obviously, it was his voice, so he wants to throw as much doubt upon it as possible. But certainly, I never had that view of that activist, and I didn't know any rumours of mental instability or orange hair or taking crack or boyfriend. None of that. So I think it's. He's trying to lay down a few doubts in advance, but I don't recognise that at all.
He goes on to describe how your view was that the recording may have been a deliberate attempt by the state to unsettle the group, so it might have been done.
It's a bit
As
of
a
a roundabout
deliberate
way of doing that, isn't it? I mean, like to put it on someone's answer machine in the hope that they might get in touch with you in time for you to listen to it in order to spread it. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I said anything about that. I don't think it was a. I wanted to identify who was speaking, basically, but and in hindsight, I should have been a lot more methodical about it. I should have listened to it, thinking, "Is this?" and gone through the list of the steering committee or people I knew were involved and what have you, which I didn't, which I regret.
So when it states that no one present asked to listen to the tape, all enjoyed a laugh at the expense of the state.
I don't think we had. I mean, it wasn't a tape; it was a CD. I got an MP3 of it. So, but we weren't meeting in the office, and we didn't have the wherewithal to play the recording at that meeting. So, it would be pointless to ask to listen to it. Really, I played it to everyone I could when they came into the office. And yeah, so we laughed at the incompetence of the spy getting two people mixed up who were so obviously not the same person.
And then the last bullet point here, GT. So you thought they ought to get round to putting it on their website. And then Groundhog Day, so HM118 and Privacy were asked to implement this in due course. So was that right, that you suggested the idea of putting the recording or a recording of it on the Globalised Resistance website, and the people to put it on the website, the quote-unquote webmaster HM118 and another person. Do you remember that being suggested?
Yes, yeah. I mean, like, we didn't have it bleeped out and redacted like the one we've just listened to here, so I was a little bit wary of putting things up. There was other names which of people who were quite prominent in the movement and would be quite recognisable because they weren't English names. So I was wary about that. So I was in two minds of putting it up, but if we should have got it redacted and posted. But obviously 118 was very keen not to put it up, I think, for some unknown reason. So
and we can be clear about that 118 did not
he did not put it up, no.
the Globalised Resistance
Indeed.
Website. So I don't know whether this point is a convenient moment to have a mid-afternoon break before moving on.
It sure is.
May I ask you to reflect upon something over the break?
Okay.
It's all about X and the issue that was discussed this morning.
Yes.
You are absolutely convinced that X was misidentified by HN118.
Yeah.
And there is no possibility of him being mistaken about it. He can't have got them muddled up.
I mean, I think there's an age difference of about 30 years between these people.
Forgive me, I'm not asking for it. I'm asking you to think about things over the short break.
Okay.
Because what I want to ask you to reflect upon is whether there is anything you can tell me, either openly, publicly, or in a private session, if necessary, as to why he might have misidentified the individual. Anything you know, not can speculate about, but anything you know.
Right.
And I'm asking you to reflect upon that. And when we come back in 10, 15 minutes, would you tell me whether or not you would like to say something about it, and if so, whether in public or in private?
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Bramble, before we begin, I'd like to see whether there's
Yes.
a response.
You asked about MT and X.
Yes.
And the way they were confused and why.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that in public or whatever.
In that event, could you tell... I've just been told that you are happy to explain to me, to the best that you can, why MT and X have been misidentified in the reporting.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Shall I do that?
Please.
Yes, I will. I think the story of this crazy stunt being carried out by a middle-aged white bloke is a lot less exciting than someone who HM118 thought was a young Arab person. I think the optic of that would be much more engaging for media, for police management, and therefore it was a bigger story like that. I think the fact that he wasn't Arab was by the by. It was that was his description of him, and therefore I just think it made it a bigger story than it was, a bigger spectacle than it could have been, and something which was a lot more dangerous than it was. So I think that's the reason they got confused like that. Well, not confused. They got changed. One identity was put into the story instead of another person's, and it just made it a scarier story.
That is, with respect to speculation on your behalf, on your part. What I asked was whether there was anything that you knew which might have given rise to the misidentification.
Oh, I see. That's the only explanation I can think of. There was nothing... No, I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't know he'd reported on it until the inquiry started. So I got no idea of other information that would throw further light on that, I'm afraid.
Thank you, but
You're very
thank you
welcome.
for reflecting upon it, and thank you for the frankness of your answer.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, I was asking you before the break about a meeting that took place at the Royal Festival Hall in February of 2004, and that meeting including the possibility, but did not take place, of the recording being put on the website, and also the tone of that meeting being relatively light-hearted with references to laughter. I'd like to move now to the 20th of August 2004, another meeting at the Royal Festival Hall, but with a different tone. And in order to ask you these questions, I'm going to ask first if we can put up MPS 0036265. So this document is at your tab B243. It is DCI Michael Dell's file note. The date of the file note, we can see, we have it on screen, it is the 24th of August 2004. I just want to ask you some questions about it. So if we begin the second sentence. On the 20th of August 2004, in a public area of the Royal Festival Hall, regularly used by activists for meeting, RW, I'm just going to pause there. We have seen the reference to Groundhog Day, or sometimes the hog, being the code name that was used in HN118's reports. However, by this stage, the code name had changed from Groundhog Day to Ring Wraith, and so RW is a reference to HN118 still. So that's who we're referring to. So on the 20th of August 2004, in a public area of the Royal Festival Hall, regularly used by activists for meetings, RW was confronted with a poor copy of the recorded conversation by 4 leading globalised resistance activists, Guy Taylor, Privacy, and Privacy. RW is several pages into the production of a detailed account, the oral version of which has been given to DS Beals and to me in lengthy debriefs. Other intelligence allowed RW to prepare himself for the event, but it is plain that his own fortitude, sharpness, professionalism and experience allowed him to turn in a bravura performance, challenging every premise of his inquisitors, plainly dominating them psychologically and exploiting their eternal uncertainties over who is and who isn't an informant. Now, just to pause there before we go through the rest of the document. In relation to the confrontation meeting, could you explain to us in your words what happened at the Royal Festival Hall on the 20th of August 2004?
Okay, yeah, there was it was a meeting, I think, for the website, and me and 3 other activists met with HM118 to discuss the website. We did not have a copy of the recorded conversation. We had it on CD, but had no way of playing it. And before the meeting started, I said, right, before we get going on this, Simon, you've been rumbled, you've been talking to the police, that recording was of you, fuck off. Basically, that was the beginning of the meeting. And he kicked it, he said, no, it wasn't me, and there was an argument over what was and what wasn't him. I don't remember any fortitude, sharpness, professionalism or experience in his performance. But he did at one point say, he had a CD Walkman on him, and he said, I've got to listen to this message, and he disappeared. He said, I've got to go and get some batteries for my Walkman. And so he disappeared for a while. I assume it was to go down to the people waiting outside for him in case we started slapping him about. But he came back after a while, having not got any batteries, and came back to plead his innocence. And he had a little cry. He said, I was going to ruin his life by doing this. And so basically I just told him that the trust had gone and that we could no longer work together, and kicked him out, basically. I think this final sentence in the thing on the screen there, that's what comes of when you allow an actor to write their own review, isn't it? You just get this amazing write-up of something which I didn't feel dominated psychologically, and I didn't feel like I had any eternal uncertainties. As I said, I recognised the recording as him, not through the sound of his voice, but a catchphrase that he used, the all kinds of stuff. So I was convinced it was him, and we kicked him out, basically.
I'd like to just, if we can just move down the page, the bullet points under the heading facts. So facts, RW's days at the very core of GR are over. He has been characterised as an activist who has betrayed GR by talking to police, not as an SDS officer who has penetrated the organisation. Now, of course, Mr. Taylor, you did not know about the existence of the SDS at that point. But was that correct? That
Yes.
He was characterised as an activist who had betrayed GR by talking to the police. Is that?
Yes, I mean, I would, as I said earlier, I had no conception of the idea of spending a wage looking at us. It was ridiculous. So I didn't think the Metropolitan Police would be that foolish with their money as to try and infiltrate globalised resistance. So I thought he was an activist. I thought his cover story included having spent an amount of time in Australia and having fathered a child there, and then being found to be overstaying his visa and he got deported back to the UK. And I thought they might be using some form of contact with his son or daughter and be able to, blackmail him into giving information like he did on that recording. So, I thought it was something along those lines. I didn't imagine it would be a full-time police officer looking at us.
This morning, when I was asking you questions about globalised resistance, the philosophy of globalised resistance, its attitude towards violence, I think you may have alluded to this document, because the next bullet point, it says, the risk to him is negligible in terms of being discovered. But then it goes on to state this: his 4 inquisitors, individually and then collectively, were in tears. Now, just pausing there, you've described how HM118 cried.
Yeah, he did cry at one point, and there were tears on our side, not all of us. I think it was just the shock of being betrayed in such a way by him. It was very upsetting. So some people, not all 4 of us, I think 1, maybe 2 people that weren't 118 in that meeting cried, but it was a very stressful and uniquely disturbing meeting. I've never been through anything quite like it. I've had relationship breakups which have been easier than that, and basically it was an upsetting time. So, but at the same time, I think they were correct. There was no prospect of violence, he turned on some very realistic tears. I think he might have been very upset at losing his job, which I thought would be the outcome of the whole thing.
So,
which didn't turn to be the case.
Reminding ourselves that this document that we're looking at is DCI Michael Dell's file note, just for the context of it. So it goes on: these are not violent people. I have previously prepared a risk assessment for Operation Dalliance, which was entirely vindicated by subsequent events. The security service concurred with their separate risk assessment. There is no history of violence. There is no prospect of violence. And in terms of that analysis, would you agree with that? In terms
Yes,
of
and it does raise the question what he was doing there in the first place, if there's no violence in globalised resistance. It undermines the whole deployment, really, doesn't it? But anyway, that's what happened.
And so this document is 4 days after the confrontation at the Royal Festival Hall. So it's 4 days after that. I just want to ask for your reaction, the impact it has on you reading what we can see on page 3, please. So if we move forward to page 3. So on page 3, and you can see Michael Dell's name at the bottom of that. But if you look at the second bullet point, consider with C Squad whether we should leave GR intact or, through RW, mount a destructive operation. I just want to ask what your reaction to that was when you first read it. So this is obviously consideration being given to various options. And one here says, consider with C Squad whether we should leave globalised resistance intact or, through HN118, mount a destructive operation. What was your reaction when you first read those words, please?
My reaction was to consider whether they did that or not, or tried that or not, because 118 continued meeting with a couple of people I know from GR. It did lead to a certain amount of distrust within the organisation. I think in some ways that was, I suppose, inevitable once you find out an infiltrator and you kick them out, and some people doubted that. So in some ways, I think it happened in the way, I don't know if it was purposeful on the part of the police, but basically, there was it was a harder atmosphere to organise in because there was distrust, and some people thought that I was a bit of a bastard for kicking him out, to be honest with you. So I think that made it a harder way to continue, really, which was pretty tough. The days after his expulsion were pretty tough. The months after it, really. It was much harder to carry on in GR.
Before leaving this document, may I ask you what impact it had on you to read what we can see in this next bullet point? Acknowledge that SDS activity is not event-based, that it was formed because an inept MPS in 1968 could not explain what was happening, given its failure to understand the political world outside general orders. Acknowledge that political intelligence is not simply a function of knowledge of organisations. And again, same question, what was the impact on you of reading those words about political intelligence?
I think if it explains some parts of 118's behaviour. We covered before about him being a provocateur, and obviously and he did participate in the meetings that decided the way forward for globalised resistance. So, yes, his impact on the organisation, although because of his low level understanding of the politics of the whole thing, I think would have limited his ability to do so. But I think he did play a role in trying to get people arrested, in trying to undermine globalised resistance, and therefore it was he did try that. He tried to derail globalised resistance, although he failed in that sense, because I think people had a better understanding of what was going on and didn't listen to the stuff he was suggesting at times.
This is August 2004. I just want to move forward in time to November 2004. Please can you take that document down, and can we please bring up MPS 0039616, which says at your tab B255. We can see the date of this is 10th of November 2004. SDS notes meeting with Globalised Resistance Steering Committee member privacy. I just want to ask you about the accuracy of what is set out here. It says this report seeks to set out the details of a meeting between myself, as that's HN118, and privacy on the evening of Tuesday the 9th of November 2004. Privacy, a semi-professional activist with a long history of involvement in the areas of animal rights, much of it in her native country, and anti-capitalism, currently sits on the steering committee of Globalised Resistance. I'm a serving SDS field officer. May be remembered that I was challenged by members of my target group on the 20th of August this year and accused of informing on a lone occasion to the police. Privacy was one of those that challenged me. These matters are dealt with in some detail under the auspices of Operation Dalliance. Since that initial confrontation, I have kept in sporadic touch with Privacy. This contact was initiated by her on the day after the challenge was made, when she sent me an SMS text message that both offered support and stated that she did not believe that I was guilty of being an informant. This contact has been kept up almost exclusively by means of email and texts, but also by the occasional voice call since then. And then it goes on to state, last night we met for dinner at a vegan restaurant in Soho. Privacy was relaxed, friendly and off guard throughout the evening. We were together from about 8:30 p.m. to midnight. As might be expected from a meeting of this length, the conversation was wide-ranging, but perhaps naturally enough, the conversation often turned to the events of late summer and what has happened since. And this is what I want to ask you about. A summary of the relevant points follow, and I wonder if you can just scroll down, please. Thank you. Privacy said that the whole matter had been dealt with in a clumsy fashion by Guy Taylor, Globalize's full-timer and my former primary target, and that this had caused a lot of bad feeling within the group. She added that a sizable proportion of the steering committee did not believe that I was guilty, either because the voice on the recording was not mine or that I was the target of a dirty tricks operation by the state. Privacy added that the only people who stood foursquare behind the decision were Socialist Workers' Party members, and that the suspicion was that they had been ordered to strictly toe the party line. Now, leaving to one side the accuracy of what is reported here by HM118, because there's no suggestion that you were involved in that dinner at the vegan restaurant. But I want to ask you about what is said to have been said to him, that a sizable proportion of the steering committee didn't believe that HM118 was guilty. Is there any truth in that?
No. There's two things to say about this. Firstly, I've had an email from that activist who did meet up with 118 at that vegan restaurant, with a vast. I think it was an appendix of my witness statement. I think it was. So you have a copy of it here. It's a vastly different description of that meeting, and so I would say that firstly, she did not say that, but certainly his reporting of this is well, her imparting information to him was different to what he claims here, and he's always inflating things or changing things. I mean, like, there was definitely people who weren't in the Socialist Workers' Party and the steering committee who were absolutely satisfied that it was him. So this doesn't add up at all. It's another bit of, as my children would say, he seems to be completely delulu at this point.
What I'm going to do is just go through the rest of this document, and then we will turn to your statement in particular, where you set out the email that you've referred to. So if we go to the next bullet point, Privacy also reported that the situation was still only known to a relatively small group of individuals. Apparently, Taylor has made it clear that the matter is dealt with and over and should not be openly discussed. There are understandable reasons for this. If it were true, it would be deeply embarrassing for Taylor if the matter became common knowledge. He vouched for my trustworthiness on many occasions to activists senior to himself, let alone me, and in many individuals' eyes, I would have been considered his protege and right-hand man. So just in terms of leaving to aside for one moment the issue about whether this was said in the precise words in the meeting between 118 and Privacy, could you help us with whether that is accurate, that you firstly made it clear that that matter was dealt with, over, should not be openly discussed? Is that a fair description, at least, of your stance?
No, I didn't. I wouldn't say it was. I didn't particularly like dwelling on it. It was an unpleasant memory. But if people wanted to talk about it, they could. There was no quashing of people discussing. There was no restrictions on freedom of speech with globalised resistance. Would it be embarrassing for me? No, it wasn't particularly embarrassing. As someone was grassing people up to the police, it wasn't anything to do with me. I did vouch for his trustworthiness to people, I guess. I don't know who the activists senior to me were, but basically, yeah. Is it embarrassing? No, I don't think I felt any embarrassment about the whole thing. And the idea that he was my protege right-hand man is just laughable. I mean, there was a lot of people around in globalised resistance, and a lot of people who helped in various different ways. And I try to encourage and show faith in all of them. But that was, again, overinflation of his own importance.
And just reading on, Privacy has forwarded many of the emails that I had sent her to others on the steering committee. This has had the effect of widening the circle of those who are aware that I have repeatedly asked Taylor for various information, including a copy of the recording and the date that the call was made. This is good news, as more people have become aware that I was proactively trying to resolve the situation without it looking as if I was trying to be divisive by emailing the whole steering committee list. Many have asked why Taylor has never provided me with any of the information that I have requested. Just on that point, is it correct that many people asked you why you never provided 118 with that information?
I don't think anyone asked me that. I think there was, when I'd put the case for this being Simon Wellings on the recording, I think people largely accepted it, and some people did not, and they were the ones that kept in touch with him. But that was no more than 2 or 3 people. I don't recognise that at all. No.
And just to finish this document, many activists had seen me at the recent European Social Forum and other events, and Chris Nineham, SWP Central Committee member, Globalised Steering Committee, and just move to the next page, please. Fellow activist Taylor, over the last 18 years or so, had apparently remarked, well, he hasn't disappeared, has he? In fact, he's all over the fucking place. After the initial confrontation, Nineham, in perhaps an attempt to have both his cake and eat it, had intimated to Taylor that if I was indeed guilty, then they could expect me to disappear completely over the coming months. Now, as we know, HN118's deployment does not come to an end at this point. It continues. And would you agree one of the reasons that was possible was because that there was lingering doubt in globalised resistance in relation to precisely what his role was?
I think if there was lingering doubt, I mean, I don't think Chris Nineham doubted it at all. I think he was convinced. We didn't really discuss it in too much detail, so I don't know exactly what everyone else's thoughts on it were, apart from the people in the confrontation meeting we had at the Royal Festival Hall. Noel Douglas, I'm pretty certain was absolutely convinced it was him. And and in fact, when this inquiry started and I was accepted as a core participant onto it, and therefore we had proof that he was a police spy, I had a number of emails and phone calls congratulating me on taking the stance that I did. That might have been from people that doubted it, but the fact that people accepted it. I don't think there was a significant number at all. There was a very tiny number of people who didn't believe me. And if you look down on this, there's after the big privacy bits, it says he went on to say that in his heart of hearts he knew that I was innocent, but he had been forced to oust me after a direct order from the SWP Central Committee. That is absolute nonsense. I told 2 members of the Central Committee, ones that were actually in Globalised Resistance, that was Chris Nineham and Alex Kalinikos, I told them that Wellings had been spying on us, giving information to the police, and I was going to kick him out, and both of them said, fair enough. That was the only communication I had with the SWP Central Committee over that decision. So, it's him. He can't keep anything at truthful level. He has to overinflate it or lie or exaggerate it in order to make things look better for him. I mean, there was no chance of him ever getting back into globalised resistance, and I don't know what he was. I think this stuff about trying to sow seeds of doubt and what have you was a reckoning operation.
I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the accuracy of this paragraph, because he states towards the end of the evening, so this is the description of the meal with privacy in the vegan restaurant. Towards the end of the evening, and after much red wine and some tequila, Privacy confided the most significant information to me. She told me how she and Taylor had staffed a globalised stall at the recent Respect conference. There's some privacy redactions. And then this. This was followed by the pair going to the pub and drinking red wine. The conversation turned to me, and very shortly afterwards, Taylor broke down and started crying. He confided to Privacy that he had been having nightmares where he was being judged by some supreme power for having condemned me, and that he knew that these dreams were a punishment for treating me so badly. Is that correct?
Total rubbish. I mean, I don't remember doing the Globalised stall at the Respect conference with that activist. We might, if we did it, we probably did go to the pub, as was our habit. But I don't think I ever drank red wine in a pub either. I'm much of a Guinness kind of person.
And the last two sentences in this paragraph, he continued that this was now eating him up with guilt. After this confession, he swore Privacy to secrecy and explained that the matter must be allowed to rest for the good of the organisation.
No, absolutely, that did not happen. I did not. I didn't lose any sleep over kicking him out of GR, and I think other people who probably had no view on whether it was him or not didn't miss him. So I don't think there was much to worry about there.
You have provided the email that Privacy sent to you.
Yes.
And we have that as an exhibit, but I want to, in fact, just turn to your statement, please. If we can go back to Mr. Taylor's witness statement, because you set out the relevant paragraph from that email on page 38, paragraph 51, please. So this is where you have quoted the relevant passage in the email from Privacy. So this is the person that
That's
met
right.
with 118, and it reads as follows in italics. So at some point later, I emailed him. I may have been responding to an email from him, but I don't think so. I appreciate, Guy, that you're thinking, what a fucking idiot about me at this moment. It was an email account that closed down, so I don't have it anymore. I asked if he was okay and hoped he was all right. He asked to meet up, so I met him at the Beetroot Cafe. Welling said he'd been at the ESF in Crystal Palace and had seen me on the GR stall, but hadn't liked to come up. He asked me what was going on in GR, and I realised that even if I wasn't sure he was a spy, I suddenly didn't feel comfortable telling him anything about GR. So I said it was fine, something vague about the tank. He then asked how Dan was, so I said something else non-committal. It was quite awkward and sort of petered out quite quickly. That was the only time I met him outside a GR scenario. So that was the email that was sent to you in relation to the conversation we've just discussed. On this particular point, I would like to ask you about what HN 118 has said about not who you told about what happened, but who you didn't tell. I wonder if we could turn to page 24 of 118's statement. It's paragraph 70, please. So paragraph 70, my deployment changed in late 2004 because of a compromise for which I held myself responsible, contrary to what Guy Taylor has stated publicly in the account of my deployment provided in Undercover, Evans and Lewis, London 2013, at pages 211 to 213. My deployment did not end. I moved across to provide coverage of the Dissent Network. My former associates from GR saw me at events, but as far as I'm aware, never exposed me as a potential informant to the anarchists with whom I associated. And then it's this. It was not in their interest to do so. Insofar as I was an informant in their eyes, their position will probably have been that it was far better that I was in place disrupting the competition rather than providing information on GR's activities. And so the suggestion here from 118 is that you were aware that he continued his deployment, or he continued to mix with those in the Dissent network, but you didn't say anything to anyone in Dissent because essentially you're quite happy for the competition to be disrupted. What's your reaction to reading that from HM118?
You see, I never saw Wellings again after that kicking him out of GR. So I actually didn't know that he was part of Dissent. I'd heard from a couple of people that they'd seen him at the ESF. The European Social Forum a big event happening at Alexandra Palace. The Dissent lot had their alternative event down the road. So I think at Middlesex University, can't quite remember. So I mean, like that is the only time I heard people refer to it, having seen him outside of Globalised Resistance after he got kicked out. So I wasn't aware of his involvement in Dissent. I would have told them if I'd known that. And I was, I frequently met up with people, with a couple of people from Dissent to discuss things. There was one time before the G8 in Scotland, both the, I don't know if it was Dissent or which formulation of the anarchist movement side of the movement had it, but they had organised a train up to Edinburgh, and we had as well. We both chartered trains, and we were both a bit worried about low sales, so we actually discussed ways of merging those two trains, but we found it was going to be too problematic to do so because we wanted to travel at different times and what have you. So, I mean, like there wasn't a case of that rivalry and we want the police to spy on that group or whatever. That's nonsense. I would definitely have told them if I'd known he was involved in Dissent. I think that's a terrible thing. The trouble is, most of Dissent didn't understand that he was involved in Dissent because he wasn't that involved. I've spoken to activists from that network, and it's a shame that none of them get a witness on HM118, to be honest with you, because all the people I've spoke to don't remember him from Dissent. And I don't think he was particularly visible in Dissent. And if they couldn't see him, I certainly could not either. So I think his involvement in Dissent was a bit of a myth, which most of his, the bits I've seen of his intelligence sent to his handlers from Dissent were emails and leaflets and photocopies of stuff, rather than really, really juicy inside information. Stuff like he used to say about me and my girlfriends, that wasn't there. So basically, I think his imagination had to step up a gear when he infiltrated Dissent, because he knew even less about that than he knew about globalised resistance.
You've already spoken to some extent about the impact that this has had on you, but I'd like to refer in particular to what you have set out in your statement at page 40, please. It's paragraph 60. And you state here, personally, I found it more difficult to accept new people into my life, both in GR and in other senses, when someone you have put trust in betrays not only you, but your principles and many other people around you, people you appreciate and love. It demands a big adjustment and a rethink. I think the effects of this infiltration will never really leave me. Well, you've set it out clearly there, but can you just explain in any more detail how this has affected you?
I think the turmoil I went through, not because I doubted it was him, but because I knew it was him. The fact that I had given him the keys to the office, given him my password for my computer, shown him every trust and appreciation, and then him to dump on me like that and dump on the organisation. And I mean, like that job for globalised resistance was my life. I mean, there was very few boundaries between my job and my life in those years. For some, I remember sleeping in the office on a number of occasions because I'd been working so late and didn't have the energy to cycle back to my place or whatever. So, I mean, I invested so much in globalised resistance. I loved it. I loved I loved those years and all the rest of it. And when I look back on it, I want to be happy and proud of it, which I am in many ways, but there's this horrible stain on it, the stain of betrayal and the stain of this little shyster who's just been, treating me like dirt and grassing people up. And the things he's telling the police who could put them in under threat of arrest or under threat of surveillance themselves and what have you. I just think it's a disgusting way of carrying on. And I mean, like, when I look at all the things this inquiry's been investigating, and the last couple of weeks, when you've had those two coppers who have had relationships with women in the movement, nothing I can describe about my own experience can even touch the horrendous experience that those people have had. But it doesn't mean what I went through was nothing. And I think, you know, the way people have been treated as, you know, kind of little bits of tools in the story and little bits of factor to look at and to inspect and to try and, you know, kind of analyse and split this person up from another, spread distrust there, report on this everywhere else. It's an absolute disgrace. It's a horrible way of treating people, and we did nothing to deserve it. So, yeah, it's really affected me. It's made me very angry. Obviously, I've still not lost the anger. But, I mean, like, you know, it's and actually going through this whole experience of the inquiry. I mean, my solicitor phoned me up and saying, we're going to get disclosure soon. You're going to get 30 or 40 documents to look through, and we'll have to come up with a statement. And when I looked at it, and there was 275 documents there, and I plowed through that. It took me bloody weeks to read all that, and it was really, really disturbing, and it's really, really horrible. It just makes me so angry.
Nearly come to the end of your evidence, but moving away from HN 118, may I ask you about another undercover officer? I wonder if we could just turn over to the next page in Mr. Taylor's statement, please. So here, HN 66, and you refer to his witness statement, states he was arrested at a protest near the Aldermaston Atomic Weapons Establishment and put inside a prison cell with me, and that he established a rapport with me. So this refers to an event in May 2001. And so I would like to ask you about your recollection of sharing a cell with another undercover officer, HN 66. Of course, not the same amount of exposure as you had to HN 118, but could you just tell us about what interaction, if any, you had with HN 66?
Yeah, we spent, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hours in the cell together. So you're going to have a chat, aren't you? I can't remember a huge amount. I mean, I know that he describes me as an anchor, so we didn't talk politics much, did he? Or he didn't understand it if we did. So basically, yeah, we had a chat about this, that and the other, really. I mean, I think it was quite like you know, kind of, it wasn't heavy political conversation. We had a chat. We seemed to be all right. He seemed to be a nice enough bloke. And we, you know, we didn't really keep in touch afterwards. It was an entire, well, I mean, like, it's never fun in a prison cell. So we just, yeah, we were talking to while away the time more than sharing information, I think, because I can't remember a huge amount about it. I'd been arrested that morning. It was a blockade of the Aldermaston Weapons Establishment. And we were the first to turn up because we'd stayed overnight. There's a minibus of us went from London. We stayed overnight in the Reading International Solidarity Centre, RISC, and we got up quite early because we were sleeping on a wooden floor. And we got there quite early. I sat down for about 13 seconds before I got arrested. They took me first and put me inside a van. So they left me with my mobile phone. So I'd phoned my solicitor and everything before I got to the station. And I was put in a cell, got some sleep, and then was joined by this other bloke, and we had a light chat. But I don't remember a huge amount about it because we didn't have a conversation of much consequence, to be honest with you. So, yeah, that was about it, really.
Now, of course, we have covered a number of topics today, but is there anything further, any direct factual evidence that you wish to bring to the inquirer's attention that we haven't covered already?
Yeah,
anything further?
There's a couple of things. There was one document which I haven't got the reference of it, I'm afraid, but there was a document which made it apparent that HM118 had followed a female member of the steering committee home and detailed her journey home from central London. She was she lived on her own, or maybe with her mum, I'm not sure. But yeah, she lived a lot of the time on her own, and he detailed her journey home, which I found really, really creepy. And especially in an area quite close to where, much later on, Sarah Everard was abducted and killed. So I think that kind of stuff was really out of order, and I think should be looked at in his questioning and made an issue of. Another thing was there was one report of a woman who was she was treated badly by someone in globalised resistance and was short of cash, and therefore, according to HM118's reporting, that she might be worth an approach. This was way before he got kicked out of globalised resistance. Again, probably I can only imagine that an approach would be to mount some sort of wrecking thing, or maybe an approach for information. I know the person involved, and she's a person of great principle and resilience, so I don't think that would have worked. But I think there was, with those things and other things we've heard about his reporting on my relationships, on other people's relationships, I think there was a real stink of misogyny about what he did and how he reported on us, and I think that should be made an issue of. And finally, during my time at Globalised Resistance, I also got involved in No to ID, which was the campaign against the last time they tried to introduce ID cards under the Tony Blair government back in, I think it was 2003, around that time. Now, that wasn't a particularly left-wing campaign. I mean, one of the people involved was Mark Littlewood, who later on became the governor of the economic. I can't remember what the organised. He later then became an advisor to Liz Truss. That's how far away politically he was from us. It was a very broad. It had right-wing libertarians. It had techie, privacy geeks. It had me and other people. And he listed everyone's name from the committee and everyone's email address from the committee, and tried to make a thing of No to ID being an organisation he should report on. It's also interesting when he talks about when he had that trying to justify the cost effectiveness of the SDS. Document which we discussed earlier with regards to the suicide bombers vest incident. He didn't list No to ID amongst the large list of organisations he'd reported on in his time with the SDS. I can't understand why that was made an issue of, to be honest with you, and I can't understand why privacy geeks and all the rest of it should be reported on. I know I've heard talk of there was many more reports. He claimed to have made many more reports than we have seen. There's the cost of his deployment was, from what we can tell, it was immense. I mean, he came on a mobilisation to New York with us. I think we mentioned it earlier. On that mobilisation, he had a per diem of $324 a day, despite the fact that we have supplied his accommodation for him. Again, he went to Seville with us, with myself and Mr. Douglas, and he had a per diem of €250 a day. He claimed a lot of money. He claimed, I don't know if this 100 pints was part of his of an expenses claim, but he had a lot of overtime. He worked for the SDS for a long time. He had 5 overseas trips with us. when he went overseas, he had a cover officer travelling with him. After his after we got the recording of him from the answer phone message we've all heard today, he had a squad car or a number of coppers outside waiting to rush in if we'd started attacking him for being a police officer. This was a huge amount of money, a huge amount of public funds spent on looking at us, who were, you know, quite a jovial group of people who did. We made tanks and we had different ways of trying to get things across. We were never a threat to public order. The police have actually said that in their risk assessments of us, and they spent all this money on us. And I think it's a huge waste of public money. It's a huge violation of our human rights, and it's ridiculous. And you know, the fact that this is one of the last deployments of the SDS is quite fitting, because this is a sorry story which was a fitting end to the Special Demonstration Squad. Wish I'd said that better, but yeah, it was ridiculous, the whole thing, and it should be condemned.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Sir, may I invite you to rise very briefly to see whether there are any Rule 10s? I've been given an indication there may be.
Yes,
some. Thank you.
of course. And any re-examination will follow that.
Yes. Sir, thank you for the time. Mr. Taylor, may I ask, when HN 118 was confronted on the 20th of August 2004 at the Royal Festival Hall, can you remember if Noel Douglas was also present during that meeting with 118 where he was confronted?
No, he wasn't, I don't think.
In relation to the 2 points that you mentioned, the report about the route home and also about no to ID cards, those 2 documents have not yet been processed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the MPS number. We're going to try to process those documents in time for 118's evidence next week. But for the record, the references are MPS 0029367 and MPS 0040912. In that way, those documents will not be forgotten. Mr. Taylor, I have no further questions for you, and I'm told there's no re-examination, sir.
In which case, may I thank you for coming to give oral evidence about matters which can only be resolved, if they can be at all, by listening to what all participants have to say about them. I'm afraid you won't learn my answer, if any, to those questions until the interim report on the SDS is published next year. I have to ask for your patience, but may I express my gratitude to you meanwhile.
Well, thank you for listening to me.
At all.
Am I ranting?
I learn a great deal about human nature. Thank you. Forgive me, there will not be a hearing tomorrow. The witness who was due to attend to give oral evidence has, for reasons which he explained to me in a letter sent yesterday, not felt able to come to give evidence tomorrow. It is to be hoped that he can be called to give evidence on the afternoon of the 19th of this month, but nothing tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.